So hello everybody and welcome again to the Quilters Question Time Christmas 2024 live session for your wonderful questions. You always do a great job of sending your questions in. You can see that we have made a bit of an effort to make the room look really Christmassy. Some of the Christmas decorations that Peter and I have made over the years, which I have pulled out of the attic, out of the loft. David is here, Peter is here. We've got great questions, as I already said. I've got a couple of really lovely prizes for you this month, special Christmas prizes, and we've got one or two other quite exciting things to do this evening. So let me pass you over to David and he can welcome you.
Hi everybody, sorry I didn't have all the buttons pressed at the beginning, so if you couldn't hear anything, that was, you were in the same boat as everybody else, but we've restarted, so you've all got sound now hopefully. I can see that everybody who was saying can't hear you is now saying yes, we can hear you loud and clear, so that's good. So first on the feed tonight was Dorinda Stout from sunny California, Sue, Kathy Hiscock, I think Jam Potts, Jennifer Clifford from New Zealand, Antari, Sarah Runnacles, Joe German, lots of names I recognise, Susan Jenkins, Denise Aspinall, Patricia Curtis, lots of people on the line. I can't quite see how many, but we've got lots of good things lined up. It's looking a little bit dark. We're trying to get, we went for atmospheric and I'm not sure whether we've quite got it, so but hopefully we have.
Yeah, we haven't put the main overhead lights on because I wanted it to feel evening-y and a bit Christmassy. I didn't want it to be bright, sparkly, white light, and we have got our Christmas lights glittering away there, so they are adding a bit of atmosphere for sure. So Peter, would you like to come and say hello? And then we will explain what the two prizes are this evening, and Peter will draw numbers out. So so this evening, you might have noticed in front of me, I have got two bundles of gorgeous Tilda fat quarters. Now normally you usually get about 4 or 5 fat quarters out of us, but because it is Christmas there are 16 fat quarters in each of these two prizes, and they are called winter reds and greens. So I think somebody thought really hard about that title for these, but they are beautiful. There are lots of lovely little prints, so tiny little florals, there are checks, there are stripes, there are dots. They all coordinate together really, really well. And yeah, I could really fancy these myself, to be quite honest with you. They are really gorgeous. So you don't need to do anything, you just have to be a member. So Peter, what have you got to say to us this evening? You've taken your glasses off, I didn't recognise you.
Absolutely nothing. My work here is done, dear. I have the two.
No, do you want to say Happy Christmas?
Oh, yes,
or
Happy Christmas.
yes, and we've been talking about Christmas presents. Now I haven't got a photo of this, but Peter's just made me something really amazing for Christmas. We know we have ducks and eggs. Well, we always sorry, ducks and eggs. Yeah, we do have ducks and eggs. We have ducks and chickens, thank you. And we always have lots of eggs on the side, and they're just too many eggs, and so I said, Peter, we really need a new egg stand. How many holes are in the egg stand, Peter? It's
40.
5 tiers high. It's the egg stand to end all egg stands. But in the summer, and it's painted bright red, so it's really Christmassy. And in the spring, we get a dozen, 14 eggs a day, so it will quickly fill up. So Peter, you're going to pass those two numbers over to David and come back to chat to us later.
Okay. Carry on.
Thank you.
Okay, so shall we ask the first question? Are we ready for the first question? I'm just looking at the chat, and we seem to be there's lots of people saying hello, and lots of people joining in today. I think we're nearly at 100 people watching us now, so we're doing well, and that tends to build up a little bit after the first few minutes. Okay, so our first question today, if I can tee it up. If I can get to the right place, is from Cindy Behrens, and Cindy says, when I press my blocks, using starch or best press, I get little rumples or waves in the fabric. How do I prevent this? And we do have a picture for this here. So Philippa, what can we do?
Okay. So I really like the way you say rumples there, Cindy. That sounds really cute, doesn't it? And these are the log cabin blocks from the miniature quilt. I recognise them, and they are really tiny. Those finished strips end up at 1/4 of an inch wide, so it's a really delicate piece of work. So I don't actually know what your iron is, what your ironing surface is, but that's what I suggest you are going to have a look at. I actually don't use starch or best press. I just use water. I just use a water spritzer. I find that works equally as well. And I'm going to suggest that you try it, Cindy, because it'll save you money. It'll save the environment from another plastic bottle or two. It works just as well. But I wonder that your ironing surface is a bit spongy. When I'm doing work like this that is really delicate, I might be pressing these little blocks on a wooden board, like a breadboard, I mean, with no fabric on or anything. And just generally, my ironing board is really quite kind of flat in that sense. It's a board with one washed layer of cotton batting and then a very heavy duty canvas fabric kind of nailed over that, so it's really tight. The softer your ironing surface is, the more the work will sink into it, the more it will distort. You will not get that flat finish. And I also wonder if you're tending to iron. You don't want to be ironing, you want to be putting the iron down and pressing with steam those blocks. So don't have a spongy surface and don't be doing this action. Yeah, you need a little bit of that initially to get things going, but once you've got the seams set where you want them, you're just going to press down with steam. So be interested to hear what you're actually doing and how you get on, and whether any of those things are going to make a difference if you're not already doing them.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is from Mary Rents, and Mary says, first of all, I want to thank you for this wonderful course. Thank you, Maren. Did I say Mary? Maren. So entertaining, I just love it, and everything I tried so far has worked, so we're very pleased to hear that. She says, hurrah, I'm looking for black batting or wadding and could only find cotton polyester mix, but I need a pure cotton or wool. I use felt and microwave it for pest control. Polyester will melt. Do you have a source for that, or do I have to dye my white batting? And she says, Merry Christmas, and that's Maren Rents.
So Maren, I do have some Maren chickens, and they lay beautiful dark brown eggs. Anyway, I imagine that you are in the States because you are calling it batting rather than wadding. I have to say to you that I have never used a black wadding. I have always used a much lighter coloured wadding or batting. I'm intrigued about the pest control with a wool wadding. Yes, you might get wool moths in that, but I'm intrigued about that. I'd like to know more about that, what you actually trying to protect your work from. So because I've never used it, I did what I always do, and I did a Google search. So I came up with this in black batting / wadding. Hobbs Heirloom do an 80-20, so that's 80% cotton, 20% polyester. So I think that might work actually quite well for you. You can maybe get a small piece and try it out, little sample. There is a slightly less cotton rich one made by So Simple, which is 60-40. And then in the UK, so I don't know about in the States, but in the UK, I found 100% black cotton wadding sold by Thimble Fabrics and Crafts, also except the ands is an N, so it's Thimble Fabrics N crafts.co.uk. So for the Brits who might be looking for similar, that's where you can find it. So it definitely is out there. But Maren, tell us more, we're intrigued.
Okay, so hopefully that helps you, Maren. The next question is from Catherine Winter from New Jersey. And Catherine says, I'm interested in any tips you may have for a wool blanket that I would like to make from old wool blankets from our family's summer home. Things like designs, needles, thread, sewing foot, etc. I currently have patches of 6.5 by 8 inches. I will line the back of the quilt with some type of flannel. My sewing machine is mechanical but so sturdy. I never have had any problems, although I'm limited on some of my creativity. I'm sure Philippa can help you with that. Philippa, any suggestions for Catherine?
Yeah, so don't ever say that, Catherine. We're all incredibly creative in all kinds of different ways, and creativity isn't just artistic creativity. So I'm sure you are very creative. Right, okay, I don't know anything more than what you said there, so I haven't got an image of this. So it's a little tricky for me to make suggestions. However, it sounds to me like you are doing more like a kind of coverlet, so that you've got 2 layers. So you've got your old wool blankets that are going to be sewn together for the top of the item, and then you are going to use flannel on the back, possibly with no batting or wadding in the middle. And when you say flannel for the Brits, I imagine that is brushed cotton, not flannel. Sometimes we think of flannel as something else, so brushed cotton. I wonder whether it might be quite nice for you to take those squares, and because these blankets will have been well used and washed, they might to some degree be a little bit felted, which I see as a really good thing because it means that they won't fray. So I wonder if you should pinking shear the edges, which you can do either with the regular pointy pinking shear blade, or I've got a couple that have got a lovely scalloped pinking shear finish to them, and you could overlap the 2 pieces by, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch or something like that, and you could sew them together with something like a long triple stitch that goes 1, 2, 3. And I don't know your sewing machine, but that is a utilitarian stitch which is often used for things like crotch seams on trousers, so it's quite likely that you will have that quite a long stitch in a fairly robust thread, because the blanket fabric itself is quite thick, so you want something that is going to be strong but also visually strong with that. And you could really play with contrasting colours, so if your blankets were creams, things like that, you know, you could pick out reds or blues or all kinds of things in a real mix, and you could really play with the colours. You could do that thing that has been done quite a lot over a number of years with denim, reusing denim, where the actual seam is sewn and it's on the right side of the quilt or the coverlet, and it frays and it gives that real textured effect. But I actually really like the idea of the lapping with the pinking shears, and you can get those pinking shears online for, I mean, if you're in the States, probably $20, something like that. You probably need something like a 80 or a 90 needle, so bigger needles than you would normally use. You might go with try something like King Tut, that kind of thread, which isn't something that I normally use. I think you have to play around with that a little bit. And I would tend to suggest the same thread top and bottom, but I would do some samples with different threads on some of your scraps and your offcuts. So that's probably think where I would go with it, and play with the stitching in that manner. So again, Catherine, we will wait to see. How interesting that you're Catherine Winter and you're making a lovely winter blanket.
Okay, thank you. So Maren, who asked the last question, is from Madeira. She's come onto the chat, and she says that she will show us the design when she's... Yeah,
we look forward to that.
As soon as it's more than a design, she will show us. Okay, the next question is from Kaylin Lee, and there's a picture that goes with this, which hopefully I've got teed up. And Kaylin says, I live in Montana where it gets really cold, so I make a lot of cotton flannel quilts or quilt backs, some of which I will piece. What are your recommendations for thread and needles for piecing flannel? I've hopefully attached a pic of the just completed precision piecing block, wherein I used flannel and kimono silk thread on top and a signature bobbin line thread on the bottom, which went really well. So much so I'm doing the whole quilt in this format, as well as another almost completed half hexy baby quilt, also flannel but using a 50 or 60 weight cotton thread on top. Hope to join the live session from Montana. Love the classes, and that's Kay Lynn Lee. Philippa, what can you tell us?
So, Kaylin, yes, as soon as that block came up, we all instantly recognised it. It would be lovely to know how many of those blocks have been made as a result of the precision piecing class. It must go into the thousands. It really must. And you've got such a cute fabric there. So, again, for the Brits, flannel is brushed cotton. And if you are my kind of age, do you remember this, Peter, that you had brushed cotton sheets and they were always pink and kind of candy striped, and you got into bed. We didn't have any heating in our bedrooms. You got into bed and they didn't feel really cold against your skin, and my mum would have them for years, and then one day you'd get into the bed and you'd put your toe through it and she would slit it down, and then she would cut it in half lengthways and put the two good sides together, but she would do a flat fell seam and you'd be lying on this lumpy seam. It was purgatory. So that is my memory of flannel. Anyway, it is really lovely for a nice warm feel, so it's a great choice if you are in a cold climate. You've answered your question, haven't you? You use silk thread on the top and the signature bottom line in the bottom, and it went really well. Well, if it went really well sewing flannel, why would you change it? So my suggestion is you stick with what worked for you there. Flannel isn't particularly a hard fabric to sew. It tends to be quite open weave, so not a lot of threads per inch, and it's the brushed surface roughing up the surface that makes it a bit more sort of substantial and obviously warmer, because it'll trap air a little bit. So it doesn't need a robust needle. You know, a 70 should be absolutely perfect, and if you're working with those finer threads, you've got it cracked. So thanks for sending us those lovely pictures, and keep doing what you're doing.
Okay, great. So the next question is from Deborah Weller, and Deborah says, do you have any tips for using silk in quilts, please, Philippa?
Okay, Deborah, thank you for that question. I'm intrigued to know a little bit more about what your kind of plan is, what you're planning in your head, or maybe further. I mean, some of the questions are like half a page long, and yours is six or seven words. So you're not giving much away there, are you, really? So I can't answer specifics, but it can be quite unstable. I mean, it depends what the silk is. You know, there are all different kinds of silk. This is the kind of silk that I'm wearing here with a shiny finish. There are very stiff silks. There are very see-through silks. There are very open weave silks. There are very heavy duty brocade silks. There are all kinds of things. But some of them can be a bit unstable. And if you've got a fairly unstable silk, something like a sari, an old sari, something like that, you might want to stabilise it. There's a really fantastic product called Touch of Gold, which is a fusible interfacing, but it's a really incredibly soft handle. It doesn't really alter the handle of the silk fabric. It is an American product, but I find it really useful for lots of things. You might have seen me use it in classes. Certainly I've used it in some of the garment making classes. So you might need something like that. I wouldn't use a Pellon Vilene type interfacing, because that's just really going to alter the feel of it. You could go with something like a bias cut second piece of fabric, depending on what you're doing, if it's not really intricate. So something like a very lightweight cotton lawn might stabilize things, and it can also fray as well. So if your fabric is unstable and it frays a lot, don't try and do tiny intricate piecing with it. Do larger pieces that don't require so much handling and so much matching. But I personally think that you should use whatever appeals to you, and absolutely a silk in a quilt or a silk quilt would be gorgeous. So we wait to see what you are going to do, Deborah.
Thank you, Deborah. So Jampot says, yes, my mum always resews the outer halves of worn sheets back together again. So I think you've revived some memories there, Philippa.
Not good memories.
Okay, so now Janet has written in, and this isn't a question. She says it's a confession. Well, she says it might be a comment, but it might be a confession. And she says, I've been doing some free motion quilting recently, the spineless feathers. On one side, the right-hand side, the tension was fine, but on the left-hand side, the tension was all loopy on the back. I unpicked it and tried again, still the same. For some reason, I thought about using the straight stitch plate adjustment on my Janome. Well, what a difference it made. I should have taken Philippa's advice given years ago. I do not have to physically take one plate off and replace it with another. I just have to select the single hole in the plate. I realise that my machine is more intelligent than I am. It will not let me use the straight stitch setting if the stitch selected with any if the straight stitch plate if the stitch has any width associated with it. I have become a straight stitch plate addict. Happy Christmas to one and all, and that's from Janet.
So Janet says that she is an SSP addict. I think most of us are SSP addicts. I mean, for goodness sake, Janet, all you had to do was flick a switch. How hard is that? I mean, even the Bonina, which is really easy, requires you to physically remove the stitch plate. So let that be a lesson to everybody out there. And what I think that if you have a bobbin that goes in horizontally and sits horizontally rather than going in and being upright, it can make a difference to the quality of your free motion, especially when you're doing something like spirals. With the front loading bobbin, like I have on the Bonina, which you've seen in the class, the thread is always coming off with gravity in the same way, and so you get more consistency. Whereas if your bobbin is sat horizontally, the thread has to kind of loop round to come off the bobbin, and it can make a difference. So what the straight stitch plate is doing is it's holding everything tighter. There is less play of the work as it goes through the sewing machine, and so it just makes a better job. And I just absolutely love to hear that reinforced, and I love that to be reinforced in front of a large audience so everybody knows it really works.
Okay, thank you. If there's one thing I've learnt in however many years, 5 years working with Philippa, it's to use a straight stitch plate. So well done, Janet. Thank you for that confession. Okay, the next question is from Jane Petley Jones, and we have an image that goes with this one. And Jane says, I've been working hard on perfecting my points. I'm quite pleased with the latest group, part of a cafe facet design. One thing I'm having a problem with though is keeping exact 1/4 inch seams. I start off on course, but the fabric always seems to drift away to the left, and I have to keep angling the fabric to get back on track. I wonder if it's a matter of hand placement or anything else you can suggest. So Philippa, what can you tell us?
So Jane, I don't know what your sewing machine is, and I don't know what your foot is, but if you have got either a Janome or a Brother, the 1/4 inch foot that comes with the machine isn't the best design one. It has a very long kind of metal ski section at the front, and the guide tends to kind of distort things and not allow you to feed in, and I just think it's not a great foot. So if you have either of those machines, you need the Janome Clear View quilting foot and guide set. Now you don't need to use the guides, but the foot gives you much greater visibility. It holds the work more securely and it doesn't push it. So that is one of the things that is going to make a difference. But I suspect, I'm not sure, but I suspect that you don't have the straight stitch plate. You are not an SSP addict yet. I might be wrong with that, but the straight stitch plate, as we've already learned, makes a big difference to free motion, but also to your piecing. It holds the work more securely right to the end of the seam. Okay, it grabs it, it gets hold of it much better than a regular stitch plate with a long oval shaped hole, especially if you've got 9mm feed dogs. That's a big wide hole. That is why it swings off. If you go to my Instagram page, and you will see a post about 3 posts back, and I'm chatting about a straight stitch plate, so do have a look at that. So I do think that is very likely. A fine needle and fine thread won't fight to get through, so they're not distorting things. They'll just pierce through the fabric really easily, so they will make a difference. And just looking at the little illustration that you've given us, is it possible to put that back up, David, or not?
Yes.
Okay, so if we look at the image image on the left hand side, what I want you to, what I'm going to ask you to look at when it, okay, thank you, David. So if you look at the section on the left hand side where the print, the yellow and blue print fabric is sewn onto that kind of checky fabric, yeah, what you can see there is much better matching of those points on those on point red squares as opposed to the opposite side where they're a bit chopped up. But what I'm going to say to you is it looks to me as though you are making a unit in a different way to how I would do it. So it looks to me like it's 3 units that are quarter square triangles. So if we look again to the left hand side, in the middle of those on point red squares, you have got an extra seam. Now I wouldn't be making it like that. I know it's probably a bit too late to say this, but I would be sewing on an angle, and I would be sewing a triangle to one side of the square and then another triangle to the opposite side of the square, and then I could eliminate that seam, because the more seams you've got, the more chance you've got for movement and the more bulk you've got. So I apologise if that's not really what you want to hear, but that is good information for another time and another project. So again, feedback is always helpful.
Okay, sorry, I have to switch to the to the next picture as well. Okay, hopefully that is helpful, Jane. The next question is from Karen Thatcher, and Karen says, "Dear Philippa, your tips on precision piecing are a game changer for me. Thank you. I was trying to cut and sew correctly, but did not square up regularly, and now I know why my blocks and quilts are off. Of course, I watched the class mid-quilt. So a before and after, and here she's got a before and after, and she's showing us with the little, these are Karen's annotations showing the before on the left and the after on the right, with things just going off there, I guess. Second bit, again, it's not really a question, it is more a confession, I guess, that she watched the class and started putting it into practice, and it seemed to work.
So yes, Karen, thank you for that. It is always lovely to know that it works. And Peter's just left the room for a moment, but I wish everybody would listen to what I said. Okay, moving quickly on.
Okay, so we've got more. I've got another picture to tee up now. The next question is from Kathy. And Kathy said, "This year I undertook the 2024 Cafe Facet Mystery Quilt, which was great fun. I'll put the photo up in a minute. The quilt is 76 by 76. Let me just see if I can put that up. There we go. So it's a big quilt, looks beautiful. I'm wondering how on earth to quilt it, both due to its size and the busyness of the pattern. I'm also wondering whether to simply send it off to a long armour, as it's been expensive to undertake and I don't want to mess it up. Happy Christmas to you all, and thank you so much for everything that you do. It's very much appreciated." And that's Kathy Hiscock. So Philippa, what should she do?
So, Kathy, it looks really gorgeous. You've done a lovely job with it, and I can quite understand your hesitation of not wanting to embark on quilting that. I don't think there is any shame at all in sending your quilts to be long-armed, yeah? It is going to cost you quite a lot of money, but if you've already spent a lot of money, it might be the way to go. I would tend to look in that direction and choose something that is an all-over design that is quite flowing or circular to contrast against the geometric piecing that you've got there. And when we look in the middle of the quilt, you've got 5 blocks in the centre, and they've all been fussy cut, and you've got a circular motif really in the middle of each of those blocks. So you could take that as your theme for your quilting, or for your long armors quilting. It's definitely something flowing and circular. And I would perhaps suggest, if you can find a lovely variegated thread of 40 weight polyester in blues but with a little bit of pink in it, maybe even a little bit of green as well, that would really enhance your fabric choices there. And thank you for your thanks, we always appreciate that. So well done you, and show us the finished thing when it's done.
Thank you, Kathy. And I still remember quilt from the quilt show earlier the year. I think we might even have a picture of it coming up when we look back at our retrospective over the year. The next question is from Helen Green. And Helen says, firstly, thank you for such an interesting series of Quilters Question Time. Excuse me, I learned something a little bit different each time. Well, thank you very much, Helen. This is my question. At the request of my daughter-in-law, I'm making a memory quilt for each of their 3 young children. This will feature a number of their baby grows. I'm making a simple quilt with a central panel for the names, and then and there's a drawing which goes with that. I think I've got the right one teed up. There it is. Dimensions are approximately 45 inches by 36 inches, and they'll be the same for each child. The baby grows will be placed around this central panel. I wondered if Philippa had any thoughts on the best way to attach the baby grows. I want to attach the whole baby grow rather than cut them up, but I'm aware that they're relatively heavy compared to the quilting fabric. Thank you in advance, and that's from Helen Green.
And that's a really interesting idea, Helen, because nobody's ever asked me about attaching the entire baby grow to the quilt. In fact, I have this vision now of the baby grow being sewn on the quilt and the baby's inside it and it's trapped there. Most people cut them up and apply sections of them. Now, your baby grow will be usually a cotton jersey fabric, so quite stretchy, so you can get the baby in and the baby's comfortable, and then you're probably going to be sewing that onto a woven cotton background, so you've got 2 different types of handling there. I think you need to do a little bit of experimentation, but what I wonder is, if you don't sew the whole thing on, I wonder if you kind of cut them in half, sort of slice them front off the back, so you're just left with the front of the baby grow, and that is what you stitch on, maybe with a nice coloured thread in a fairly tight zigzag. I'm not going to suggest you do a satin stitch because I think that you're going to have too much difference in terms of the 2 different types of fabrics. You might need to put a tearaway stabiliser on the underside of the cotton, the woven cotton, when you are applying the baby grow, but I would think, because it's just going to be so much bulk and it's going to shift and move and it's going to be a bit of a nightmare really. So a single layer would be easier, and then what you're going to have is quite a big area of that knitted fabric, aren't you, on the woven fabric, so it needs to have some stitch on there, either at the quilt top stage or at the quilting stage, or both, so that stretchy baby grow fabric does not move around and distort. So experimentation is required. I'm sure there are 1 or 2 stained baby grows that have got banana down the front, because that's stained like crazy, that you can play with and really work out your method of doing that before you go ahead, and good luck with it. Right, are we going to have a little breather there, David?
Yes. So okay, back to you.
So Peter's going to come in with a tray of a silver tray. We usually do a little toast to everybody at the end of the session, but I wanted to kind of do it midpoint so that it didn't actually kind of get to be a bit of an afterthought there. Now these beautiful little coasters were made for me by my lovely friend Giselle, who is the most amazing crocheter. I cannot crochet, I have never learned, but they are gorgeous. I've got some green ones as well, and that was to stop them slipping around on the tray when they came up. But you're not drinking, are you?
You know.
No, Peter hasn't been drinking for quite some time. I don't quite know why. So I was going to suggest that he brought a little tin of tonic or something up with him. But we also, when Peter's opened that and made a really good job of it, we've got a few little slides that we're going to just run through so that we can just have a little recap of the year. So I'm just going to ask David to pause a minute while we do this. So what I really want to say is, I mean, obviously, thanks to all of you, because without you supporting us, we don't have a business. And, you know, the occasion, these sessions here are just so lovely in terms of us seeing what you do, how you have been inspired, how the classes, oh well done Peter, how the classes have really helped you move your work forward. So it's such a delight, and just getting all that feedback from you is such a pleasure. So thank you to all of you for that. And thank you to David. I mean, he gets paid for it, so you know, like I do, so we don't deserve too many thanks. But Peter puts up with so much. We take over the house.
You don't know the half of it.
Yeah, exactly. We take over the house for the duration of the filming. I mean, the studio is just rammed with boxes of all the classes that we've done and garments and things like that. And Peter never complains or says, oh, for goodness sake, will you just get that tidied up, or can I get on the computer please? He's just really generous to us. So I really mean it, Peter. I do really mean it. And I also, of course, want to thank Kelly as well, and we've got a little photo of Kelly. So David, I'm just going to pass you one of these. We'll just do a little toast to everybody, and then we will.
What that's called?
I don't know, what is that called?
Well, I think it's called a musette.
A musette, okay.
I think.
Well, so to everybody that I've just mentioned, thank you all. I hope you have the most wonderful Christmas and Happy New Year. Let's just have a little look at one or two of the highlights of the last year before we go back to our questions. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers. Alcohol.
So here we are at the Festival of Quilts, and that was in August of this year, right at the beginning of August, and we have had a stand there for 5 years, our first one being in 2019, and the stand sizes has gradually got larger as we've gone on, hasn't it, David, which is more props and more wallpaper and things. But we had a kind of washing laundry theme, and you can see some of our members there. I can see Antari there, various people there. I think we've got one or two more of the Festival of Quilts. Oh, I didn't recognise that block, anybody? We've seen that before. Lovely precision piecing block. And there's Antari next to her miniature quilt, and we have a little film of Antari and the miniature quilt, don't we, in your libraries in the Festival of Quilts section. So Antari is definitely, you're all star pupils, but Antari is definitely a star pupil there. And then that's Kathy Hiscox.
We just answered the question for.
Yes, that's her lovely quilt that's about the scoliosis that she has, and her personal story of that, which is really lovely to see. And then that's Nicole's.
Simone.
Oh, sorry, thank you. Simone's quilt. And Simone lives in Sweden, but she's been a very active member right from the start, really. And there we have.
Diane Wilkes.
Thank you, Diane Wilkes. And Diane won a prize there for her thread artistry. And so what you can see between me and the quilt are the little notifications that say this is a really special quilt. It has won a prize, which is fantastic to see.
Third prize in sustainable and first prize in thread mastery.
Excellent, well done. Really, really proud of you.
So then we've got a picture of Kelly.
So there's Kelly. So you all know Kelly. Kelly is invaluable. She does so much of our administration work, helping you with all your questions, membership questions, all sorts of things. She's very active in both of the Facebook groups, really good at welcoming people. I think she really genuinely loves to get involved and see what you're actually doing. She's often commenting. And Kelly is what is known as a virtual assistant. So she lives near Wales, which is a long way away from us, and she has various different companies and people that she works for, and we pay her by the hour, but we like to think that we're her favourite employee, don't we? Don't tell us anything different. Kelly sent her the most gorgeous Christmas present which arrived today, so we have to be up there surely. Anyway, Kelly, we really appreciate everything. There is the pin cushion from the pin cushion class that was released earlier in this year, and it was a bit of a popular thing. Lots of pin cushions were made, and I am sure there are going to be pin cushions in Christmas stockings in the next week. And then the next class that we did was the peg bag class, which was as a direct result of the Festival of Quilts, because I got asked because I'd made that prop for the stand, and that's been very popular too. So Sarah Runicles, I hope you've got your 6 peg bags wrapped up and ready to go. We did the sewing machine savvy class, which was helping you get the best from your sewing machine. That was very popular. And also about the fibres, fabrics and filaments. And I think those two classes sort of sit together quite nicely. They were discussion classes to really help you understand things that often don't get chatted about. And then this is the lampshade class, which we tempted you about last live session, but it is going to be released tomorrow. Tomorrow is the day. It is, I've got a little note here. So I teach you how to make the tailored lampshade and a gathered style lampshade. There is 2.5 hours of teaching, and then after that there is 40 minutes of inspiration and discussion of a wide range of different lampshades that I have made and why I've made the decisions that I've made to really help you decide what you're going to make and how you are going to make it. And the price of the class is going to be £20 or $30. We will be holding that price for not too long. So Christmas is coming, you are allowed to treat yourself, and the new year you can make some beautiful new lampshades for a new look in your home. So David, do you have anything you want to add to that? He looks tongue-tied. Okay.
I was busy thinking about the next question and making sure we got the right pictures. No, it's been a really lovely year. We've had some fun classes. We've really enjoyed the feedback which we get. The lives are a highlight for me every month. I really enjoy doing those, but it's all about the questions and it's all about the people who are. It's really fun to find out when everybody's getting really good information and enjoying the fact that they're quilting better. So I think that's what I've enjoyed the most. Okay, so we'll ask another question now. We'll move on. So the next question is from Patricia Renault. And Patricia says, recently I was trying to stitch in the ditch with my Benina using a walking foot with the guide. I could not succeed in achieving a smooth regular stitch or staying completely in the ditch. Does this have something to do with adjusting the stitch foot height? And that's from Patricia Renault.
Okay, so Patricia, sorry, I'm falling over my words. I've only had 2 sips out of that glass. I don't know what your sewing machine is, and I don't know whether your sewing machine is set down into the table, but it sounds to me like the work is dragging and it's not flowing through the sewing machine very well. The idea of the walking foot is that it grabs everything and helps it move through more successfully, and it will do that. But if you've got quite a weighty piece of work and it's perhaps dragging on your knee, or perhaps you don't have your sewing machine set down into the table and so the quilt is kind of on the bed of the sewing machine but then it's dragging down, that is not helping it to feed through. Okay, so you really need to keep the you really need to keep the quilt as light as possible to allow it to move through. You do want to pop on a slightly longer stitch length, so possibly 3 to 3.5. You'll have to see how you go with that. If you've got a lot of seams that are pressed to one side, they are bulky and the walking foot can stick a bit on those, and so it might be, if you look closely, that you've got smaller stitches where you've got seams and then it goes to a more regular larger size stitch as you move across those seams, and the work is able to feed through more easily. So I would look at all of those things, and yes, you definitely can reduce the pressure on your presser foot. Not all machines have that facility, but if you do, it's very well worth bearing in mind. If you are sewing 2 very fine layers of fabric together, let's say you're making a very fine blouse, something like that, you need a lot of pressure on the presser foot to hold that together. Okay, but if you are sewing a quilt which has got 3 layers and it's quite thick, if you've got a lot of pressure, it's going to kind of trap the work, so you want to reduce the pressure on the presser foot so that it will feed through more easily. So I'm just having a quick look to see that I haven't missed anything. I mean, there could be other reasons, but those are the most kind of obvious ones that I can think of. I will just say to you, even though, excuse me, going out of shot there, even though it is not free motion, this non-slip kitchen mat that you buy in a roll, cut 2 pieces off, that can really help you kind of guide the work through the sewing machine more successfully than if it is just your hands. So get a roll of that. It's very inexpensive from kitchen shops, pound shops, that kind of things, dollar stores, and use a couple of pieces of those under each hand, and that might also help you really move the work through. So again, if there's anything that you can give us on feedback on that, we're always interested to hear it.
So, a couple of comments. Kelly says we are her favourite, so thank you, Kelly.
She has to say that.
We take that. We're very pleased with that. Sarah Runnacles,
you're our favourite, Kelly.
Sarah Runnacles says that the peg bags are all on Santa's sleigh. So I can't remember how many it was she made of it.
6.
When I was count 6. Maggie Gordon says, brilliant, Philippa. I'll be signing up for the lampshade class, so that's good. So that's one person signed up. Well done. So that's great. Okay, the next question is from Pam Runyon, Philippa. And Pam says, will you be in the US for the Duca or Houston? I would love to attend one of your live classes.
Okay, Pam, I'm not planning to do that at the moment. I did have notification to send in class proposals, but I'm currently not travelling because I've got such a lot on at home. So as I said last year, I'm going to keep trotting this out, aren't I? I'm not saying I'm never going again, but it's unlikely that I'll be there next year. Do you know what, though, that I'd really love to do is just go as a kind of a punter, yeah, and just enjoy things. And what I need to do is get a quilt into the show, don't I? And then there would be a real reason to attend. I need to make an exhibition quilt. So apologies for that, but not next year, Pam.
I've been trying to persuade Philippa to make another exhibition quilt, but she tells me it takes a very, very, very long time. So and so it's going to have to wait until she's got space in the schedule. Okay, the next question is from Liz, and Liz says, I just wanted to show you what I was working on. I wrote in last month asking about quilting out from the centre point. I was working on this Christmas tree skirt for my daughter, and I think I've got it teed up. Have I got it teed up? I do. It's 90 degrees out of phase, but I think you can see that. Thank you for your help. In retrospect, I'd probably have quilted out to the seam joins, but overall I'm happy with it as only my second completed quilt project. I chose to use piping around the edge and an envelope finish versus try to do all those points and valleys. Thanks again, and that's from Liz. That looks great, doesn't it?
And what I've got written down here is fab job. I mean, if that's the second thing that you've done the most amazing piece of work there. It's so neat and lying really flat. Your daughter must be delighted with it, and what that means is she'll be asking you to make things forevermore now. So I hope you realise that, Liz. Well done.
Okay, the next question is from Maureen Robinson from Dunoon in Argyllshire. I always like the name Dunoon, I don't know why. Dunoon in Argyllshire. And she says, hi David and Philippa, when you are finishing off with a border, if not doing a continuous one and not mitered, but along top and bottom and then sides, I cannot manage to get it neat enough. Any suggestions? And Maureen has got a picture for us of her various different attempts at the borders that she's done. Philippa,
okay,
can you help Maureen?
Yes. So what I'm just going to surmise here, and by the way, David, Dunoon is famous for mugs, and in the 80s and the 90s, do you remember all those Dunoon mugs? We used to get them when we lived in Saudi, and bone china mugs, but you don't see them so much now. They always had little cartoony animals and things on, didn't they? Do you remember? Anyway, moving on. That's what Dunoon is, one of the things it's famous for. I can see in the right-hand side image, it says Project Liners, and so these quilts, or this quilt, is going to be given away to children in need of a nice warm hug. And so you are wanting to do a binding that is robust and is not going to take you a lot of time. So I am just going to say, I'm going to address your question. However, you've all got the new piping and binding version 2 class in your library that shows you how to do a continuous mitered corner binding all by machine with no hand sewing. So for this type of work, I would really suggest that you at least have a look at it. The reason that I don't do my bindings in 4 strips is the corners simply aren't as neat as when you do them with a mitered fold, and that class does show you how to do that. But if we just could go back to the images, David, if you don't mind. So if we look at the top left one, what you can see is that you on the horizontal there, you've got the first line of piping stitched on, and then on the vertical you put the second line on. Now what needs to happen is that one of the folds on the second piece of binding needs to go over that raw edge that you have got, so half, so it'll kind of not be even, but you will have seam allowance going over that raw edge, and then you will tuck in and finish. So that is going to make a much better job of it. You're not going to have any raw little bits sticking out there. But best thing is to do it all by machine, as shown in version 2 of Piping and Binding.
So have a watch of the Piping and Binding version 2. It's the first. It's the first class I think most people get in their library.
It is the first class.
So almost everybody will have that now, and we gave it to people retrospectively. Okay, the next question is Debbie from Debbie Ward, and Debbie says, I don't have a question this month, but I just wanted to say how grateful I am to have joined the QQT family this year. I also wanted to wish you a very merry holiday season and amazing year. Well, thank you very much for that, Debbie Ward.
And so, Debbie, I'm just going to use this opportunity just to chat just very briefly about some of the decorations that you can see behind me. We have a 3-storey Victorian terrace house, and the bottom floor is a separate flat, and this thing is being renovated. But we started a number of years ago, I mean, it's going back to 2019 Christmas, isn't it? Putting a really big display in the front window, because there's all this junk behind it and all this building and walls knocked down and stuff, and it kind of covered it up, and it started off really small and it's just grown and grown and grown. And there was a period when I had a display in there throughout the entire year, not a Christmas display, lots of things, but the soldier that you see there is from 2 years ago, Peter. I think it's 2 years ago. He was the Nutcracker tin soldier, and we had a ballerina. The ballerina's maybe going to make an appearance on Thursday if you're going to watch with Garment Makers. And Peter made all of that out of card and paper, and most of his body is made from the...
Move this way a little bit.
Sorry, is made from tubes that carpets are rolled onto. They're really heavy, robust tubing. I did the little trimmy bits on that, but not too much. I think it's incredibly handsome. So that's what he is. Now this one is quite an old one. In fact, it's a very old one, because this just went on the front door, and because of where it is and what it's against, you can't really see, but it was about the Christmas elf, which is always the lady of the household that does all the work, the cooking, all the rest of it. And what it actually is a sweeping brush from TK Maxx, or TJ Maxx if you're in the States, and it's got Christmas snowflake design all over it. And then I made this kind of wreath here, as if the little Christmas elf was kind of trapped in there. So there's his head, his hat, and his legs. But this is made, all of this is made from green pan scrubs, you know, those plasticky pan scrubs. And then this is J cloths for the Brits, which are cleaning up cloths, and then plastic knives and forks and little cookie cutters. So it was all about kind of the Christmas elf cleaning and getting everything done, and ship shape really for Christmas. And then just this little one here, this is also quite an old one that was done a good few years ago, for the front door. It wasn't in the window, and it hung on the front door, and so it's the stocking, which has been stuffed very securely with lots of bits coming out of the top. It has lost a little bit here and there, but what I realised was when I got it out, I mean, I loved the shape of it, I loved that toe, I just thought that was so fun, that it was a scrap of a remnant of a furnishing fabric, and I joined it here as invisibly as possible, and somewhere else. It's exactly what I did in the lampshade class. It all ties together. So that is just 2 or 3 of the little things. We have a loft. We have several lofts, don't we, Peter? Just bursting. Oh, sorry, the 25. Well, we live at number 25. and so that was used on 2 or 3 occasions, and so it was a big piece of insulating, 3-inch wide insulating foam. And so I made a paper pattern for the 25, and I pinned it onto the foam, and I cut it out with a bread knife, and then I glued glitter all over it with PVA glue, and then it had various different kind of lives, really, because of what it's made of. I pinned lots of different decorations in different themes. So one year it was blues and birds and things like that. So it's 25 because we live at 25. It's 25 because Christmas Day is 25, and of course next year is 2025. So I might have to get it on the door shortly. Okay, all right, let's do the final few questions, David.
Okay, so the next question is from Diana Bard. And Diana says, Philippa, you're an amazing quilter, and I'm really learning a lot of great techniques on how to really do things instead of just doing it like some people teach. I would like to ask a big favour. Would you consider doing a class on memory quilt making? I've been working on memory quilts for my children. That was on my bucket list. A friend offered to help me, but she just does it and does not teach, so I don't learn from her. I did get the pic. I want to do these myself with a little help, but I've not had someone to do them with. I enjoy quilt making. I did get the pictures made using the photo paper and YouTube, along with Impixio photo editor. I'm not as pleased as I would be. I would prefer the outcome, but using very old pictures dating back to their birth, and only so much you can do with editing. So there's obviously a big quilt there, and we'll show you the picture of the quilt. So there's the quilt. Philippa, any comments on this? Any suggestions for making memory quilts? Are you going to do a class for us?
Okay, so I mean, the first thing to say is the quilt is huge. It looks enormous. So it's the most incredible undertaking in terms of not just the design, but also its size. And what an incredible wealth of images you have got there. I mean, I can't even begin to see how many pictures there are. I mean, you'd go to bed and that quilt would be on the bed. You'd never go to sleep. You'd be looking at it all the time. Oh, remember when we did that? And oh, look at that. And oh, wasn't your hair terrible? But you've cracked it, haven't you? I mean, I actually think that you need to teach the class. I mean, you've done the most incredible job with it. It looks amazing. And what's really lovely about that is that when that is on the bed, you've got a really strong central focus panel there, and then you've got that nice edging, and then the bit that goes over the side is kind of images all together. So I think you've done a really great design. You've made great design decisions in that you've kind of separated out the things that are on the top that are going to be seen more often, and they definitely become something that you hone into, whereas the side pieces are more general photos that are not going to be looked at in the same way, but the theme all ties perfectly together. So you don't need me to do this. You've got it. You've absolutely got it. But like I was saying earlier in the class, you quite welcome, in my opinion, to send that off to be long arm quilted, because it is so big that is something that you might want to hand over, and because it's such a special thing and it's going to be around for so long and really treasured, it justifies the price of having that done. So well done, and thank you for showing us.
Okay, thank you for that. So Peter's dying.
He's just itching to say something. He's going to. I dread it. I can see him just like dying.
This is probably a totally stupid idea, but because of the memory quilt thing and the lady earlier that was talking about using baby grows, which is a kind of memory quilt thing.
Absolutely.
So this is maybe totally daft because I don't do any quilting, so I don't know any of that really.
Do you sew any buttons on?
Yeah, occasionally. Yeah. It seems to me one of the nice things about baby grows are the kind of poppers, and that's one of, as a parent, the memory of dealing with the pop is the poppers. And you're talking about sort of stitching the whole baby, cutting it in half but stitching it all on so that you had the shape of the baby grow. But it seems to me it would be quite nice if some of the poppers were still, that you created almost pockets in the top of the quilt, and you could it would almost become like a child game, you see, that you could hide things in the baby grow. No?
Shall we send him some baby grows and let him get on with it? Well, what you are actually saying there are quilts made for people with Alzheimer's and dementia, which are kind of feely quilts, and they have very similar things like buttons and various textural things on, so that they become an exploration and a very tactile thing. And you'll
you know how sometimes you get a chocolate hidden under your pillow.
I do quite often, yeah.
Right, but you could have, numerous pockets on this quilt, and there could be a chocolate for the child, and he would have to find where the chocolate was before he went to bed.
Or a little soft toy might be better.
Yeah, or something like that. But it just seems to me there are possibilities.
I really think we need to task Peter with that, because just the technicalities of the pop and all the rest of it. But yeah, I mean, please take that idea on and let Peter see where you go with it.
What you need to know about Peter is he is just as creative as Philippa, but Philippa says more so in a different direction. He's a sculptor with sculptures in lots of different places. So and he's an artist as well. So he is a very creative man. Okay, the next question is from Mary Ann from California. And Mary Ann says, I'm working on an applique quilt pattern designed by Erin McLean. Here is a picture of one of the border sections, and we've got the picture. My question is, what tools might I use to try and get a better visual of the stitches as I am blanket stitching around each design piece? I would like to magnify the field of vision, but I'm not sure what tools to use to make that happen. So we can see that you are we can see where you're doing the blanket stitch, but you're saying you want to get in closer. Philippa, any ideas?
Yes, thank you. So, Marianne, your the work that you've done already looks very nice and very neat. You've done a really good job of it. I cover this extensively in our raw edge applique class, which I'm pretty sure you've got in your library. It's fairly early on in series 1. What you will see in that class is that I'm using a metal open toe satin stitch foot. Okay. The satin stitch foot has a little groove cut on the underside to allow the thickness of the thread and the stitches to have a place to go. If you don't have that little kind of cutaway groove, the foot can kind of stick on the fabric and you get a build-up of stitches, stitch on stitch on stitch. So what you need is, and I'm not saying this isn't a satin stitch foot, but you need an open toe satin stitch foot. So have a look at the class and you will see that. What I also think is, if possible, a metal foot is advantageous rather than a plastic one. So what I would say is an open toe metal satin stitch foot is your first choice. An open toe plastic satin stitch foot is your next best option. And then third is a closed front satin stitch foot. The reason that you want the open toe is that there is absolutely nothing to block your vision when you're making this stitch. It makes a huge difference, and the reason I'm advocating metal over plastic is you don't get the glare of your sewing machine lights reflecting off the plastic in quite the same way. It just seems to make your ability to see what you're doing better, and you're kind of less distracted. The other thing I would say to you is that additional light, you can never have too much light. Now, we haven't got the lights on today, but I've chatted them about them before. I've got 3 overhead spots. How many lumens are they, Peter? The light bulbs are £60 each. They are phenomenal. And in addition to that, I've got a bank of spotlights on the ceiling above me, and I've got really good lights at the sewing machine. So you really need to be able to see. So I think it's a combination of those things. So I really hope that helps you. But what you've done so far is really lovely. I feel like Shirley Ballas from Strictly Come Dancing. I really do. Am I as glamorous today, Peter?
Averter of Calamities once changed a ring.
Totally different thing. He did, but totally different. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to move on, I think, on that one. So I just want to say to Philippa that we're about an hour and 5 minutes in, and we've got 5 questions left. So,
I will hurry up.
But we're doing well, and we've still got to announce the winners of the prize draw. So we will probably be about another 5 minutes or so. The next question is from Shirley Long, and Shirley says, I wonder if you have any specific tips on how to easily fix an issue when you find a small square in the middle of your top that has a flaw in the fabric, a small hole, and it needs to be removed and replaced before the final sandwiching. Shirley, are you asking for a friend, or is there something specific that you're asking about? So, Philippa,
I was going to be more
ideas?
diplomatic than that, David. I was going to say sometimes there is a flaw in the fabric that you haven't noticed and you've cut everything out and sewn it together, and sometimes you nick the fabric, and you know, we have all done it. I did it on a quilt once. I tried to be very careful with those things. I don't think there's an easy fix, okay? I mean, I think it very much depends on the quilt, where it is in the quilt, how bad the damage is, how much the quilt matters to you. If you've got to unpick it, that's quite a big job unpicking, because you've got to unpick all the surrounding seams a little way to actually insert in. So if it's important, that's just something you've got to do. If it's less important, you could put a little bit of fusible interfacing and fuse that behind it. If you are going to do that, I would tear the edge of the little patch that you are going to put in, so that you don't have a hard edge when you iron it on. You can use some fray check, which is a product that stops frayed edges going any further, and I tend to not squeeze it out the bottle, but I just put a little bit onto a piece of card or something, and I pick the product up on a pin and I just wipe it around the edge to seal the edge, that kind of thing. There is another product, and it's in the cupboard, but it's actually a powder that you can get, and what you do is you cut a little section of the same fabric, and you turn the damage to the wrong side, you sprinkle this powder over it, you put your patch on top of that, and then you put hot iron on it, and it melts the powder into a kind of adhesive, and it glues the thing together. So there are various options. Which one you choose depends on how important the quilt is and where the actual damage is, how much it's going to be seen. So hope that helps.
Okay, there you go, Shirley. You can tell your friend all the things that Philippa has suggested. So the next question is from Carol Charlie from South Africa, and there's an image that goes with this. She said it's this is not a question, as Philippa has supported me through this project, having been made in the UK. It is now in a position in my friend's house in Cape Town. I only hope the bottom right corner will straighten. So we've got an image of this, and I thought it was a question, but maybe it's not the question. If not, I will have to add a hanging sleeves. So does it look as
it's just a tiny weeny bit.
It doesn't look as if it's hanging too badly, then, does it? Happy Christmas from South Africa, anyway, says Carol Charlie. Any comments on that?
Yeah, so Carol, it looks absolutely fantastic. It looks absolutely beautiful, and it is perfect in that space. It fits absolutely ideally. You've got lovely weighting there. You've got lots of interest in the piecing and in the colouring that you have used. I mean, it's fabric, you know, it's not going to hold like a piece of steel. I think that you accept that that is part of its charm and you don't worry about it. It shows that it's a beautiful handmade thing, and you've done a fantastic job with it. I mean, all of the corners look incredibly square. The top is just positioned beautifully, really, really great. I honestly, it's the most minor little thing. I think you can let it go and you can be very proud.
Okay, thank you. The next question from New Hampshire in the USA, and there's a picture that goes with this, and she says, how do you piece rows of quilt squares together when they are not square or even? My sister quilted a little but never really completed her projects, and she passed away unexpectedly in September. Sorry to hear that, Julie. She has 4 grown sons who have families, and I would love to finish 4 projects she started, to provide one for each of her nephews before her birthday in June. And here, have I got the right pictures teed up? No, that's the wrong one. Here's the pic. Oh, here's Julie's picture.
There we go.
So Philippa, any suggestions how we can do squares when they're not squares?
Okay, so Julie, I think there is really nothing for it. Well, actually, I think there are two things. I think you either accept what you have got there, and that the fact that the finished quilt top and ultimately the quilt will be a little bit quirky. That was your sister, and that is how she worked, and so that might be preferable to squaring it all up and making it perfect. Only you can decide. But if you do want it to be really regular, you're going to have to unpick all of those blocks and square them up and sew them together. If you do that, there are odd places where sections need to match, and they're probably not going to match because of the very nature of the beast and how it's been made and the way that your sister worked. So you would have to accept that if you have it very square and regular and flat, you may have some mismatching on that. So I think your choice is you either go with what you've got, or you unpick it all and you square it up and you have a little bit of mismatching. You decide what you feel reflects your lovely sister the most, and whichever you choose, it will not be the wrong choice.
Okay, hopefully, Julie, you'll be able to make a decision from that now. So the next question is from Nava Young, and Nava says, can you bind before quilting? Will this work?
Nava, as you know, with my classes, you can do anything that you want to do. It's your quilt and you can work in any way that you wish. I wonder why you might choose to do that, what the advantage would be, unless somebody else is going to do part of the work or something like that. In an ideal world, I would do the quilting first and then binding. I think your danger of binding it first and then quilting is that you get some distorting of the layers and you get some bubbling and pleating either on the right side, the top of the quilt, or on the underside. I think that's much less likely to happen if you do all the quilting first, smooth everything out, square it up, and then bind it. But honestly, you can do whatever you want, but I would choose to quilt first and then bind.
Okay, I'm going to look at Sylvia Rennie's question next. And Sylvia, she actually posted in the Facebook group as well and got some responses. But she says, I'm having difficulty with my Bernina 570. It's shredding thread within 5 or 6 inches. Frustration reigns. I've covered all the basics, new needle, rethreading the machine, turned it on and off again, tried cotton thread, polyester thread, all the same results. The tension is sitting at about 5.25. Can you give me some guidance? And that's from Sylvia Rennie.
Okay, Sylvia, it is quite a complex question. On the face of it, it looks fairly simple, but there could be various things that are going wrong with that. I don't know whether this is a new machine, whether it's been sewn absolutely fine and then something has suddenly gone wrong. If it has been sewn absolutely fine and something has gone wrong, you may need to take it in and have it looked at. It may be that the timing has got knocked out or something like that. I mean, it does sound like you have done all of the right things. So yeah, new needle, rethread, yeah, you've done everything you could. You've tried different threads. I do think with quite a number of the Bernina sewing machines, I believe that they are calibrated in the factory on a 60 weight thread, which is a fine thread. Okay, so they do prefer fine threads. I do quite often think that the top tension is set quite high, quite tight. So I do think that if you could try reducing the top tension, that means taking it to a lower number. Certainly with the older Berninas, and it may not be the case with your particular model, but sometimes if a needle broke as you were working, it can catch the hook, and the hook is what the bobbin thread loops around to make the stitch. And if the needle catches the hook, it can put a little burr on the hook, and that can keep sort of cutting into your thread. So it might be a good idea just to have a look at your bobbin case. Sometimes you get a new needle out and it's not a perfect needle. That has happened to me on occasions. The needle could be too big, it could be the wrong type of needle. I don't really know what else to say on that, to be honest with you. All these questions always make me want to kind of get the sewing machine and thread it and have a go and see. But with the distance between us, it's very hard to be more specific than that. So I apologise for not helping further.
Okay, hopefully that will give you something to go on there, Sylvia. I know you also got some responses from the Facebook group. So between Philippa and the Quilters Question Time Facebook group, hopefully you'll be able to get a result. Okay, 2 more questions. Very short questions. The first one is from Jill Keeble-Childs, and Jill says, I've just bought a Bernina 570 QE, which to be honest I'm quite scared of. Would you recommend buying the single stitch plate and the walking foot? I've booked myself onto the free one-day Bernina course in London, but it's not until March. Thank you for all you do for us quilters, you're amazing. And that's Jill Keeble-Childs.
So Jill, well done on your new sewing machine. The only thing that makes you frightened of it is the price that you paid for it. If you had paid £20 for it, you wouldn't be frightened of it. So try and forget the price of it, okay? It's a tremendously well engineered and robust sewing machine, and you know, you'd have to work quite hard to damage it. So try not to be frightened of it. Now then, what I always recommend when you get a new sewing machine is that you read the manual from cover to cover. That is your bedtime reading, okay? You read it, you can read it once and immediately read it again. It would not be a bad thing. And you keep that manual handy. You know where it is at all times so that you can use it. It is going to teach you masses, okay? Also at bernina.com there is an incredible range of videos on all kinds of subjects to do with the sewing machine and any of the feet or any of the functions that you want to use. So bernina.com is your friend. Get to know it, use it often, just have it on, you know, just Google something, just search it on the website as you're doing the ironing or whatever you're doing, and just keep learning that. Also, I have to say, every time I have a problem and I want to do something I can't remember, Google it. There are some terrible videos out there, but there are some really good ones as well. You know, so people have got loads of experience and a lot of them will share it for no money at all online. So do use that as well. So that is your manual, bernina.com, and Googling whatever you want to learn. Now, what I would say to you is, yes, be an SSP fan and buy your straight stitch plate. We've reinforced that twice already this evening. It is absolutely fantastic. The walking foot, I would wait on that. The walking foot is really quite expensive, and I would just get to know your machine a little bit more. But the other thing is, you see me working on a Bernina in every single class, and I explain to you the settings and what I'm doing and why I'm doing. I explain the feet, I show you the feet. The feet are listed in the supply list that comes downloadable with the class. So you've got multiple places where you can access information to really help you. But the most important thing is that you sew and you sew and you sew some more. You will not know that sewing machine well until you've been sewing on it for 3 months or longer. But once you really know it, I'm just looking for my machine, it's not here. You will be as one. You will have a feel for one another, and it will be a joy every time you actually come to do a little bit of stitching. So don't be frightened, be brave, and be prepared to spend some time with it, and you will be rewarded.
Okay, thank you. So that's for you, Jill. Now the last question, well, it's not really a question, it's from Sue. And Sue says, hi Philippa, no question today. I would like to wish you and your family, David and his family, Kelly and her family, and all the members around the world a very Merry Christmas and a prosperous and productive New Year. Thank you, Philippa and David, for all your amazing work and videos. And that's from Sue E. So we would like to echo that, wouldn't we, Philippa?
Absolutely. Sue, that's such a lovely message. You've remembered everybody. There is nobody that you haven't thought about, which is incredibly thoughtful and kind of you. It's making me feel quite emotional, really. So, yeah, I mean, we've already said earlier in the session how much we appreciate all of you, and we've thanked all the people that helped to make this the wonderful thing that it is, and we can't reiterate that too much. So we now need Peter to come and tell us who our 2 lucky winners are.
2 lucky winners are Jill Smith and Maria Burton.
Congratulations to Jill and Maria, and Merry Christmas to you both. David will be in touch to find out your postal addresses, and we will get your gorgeous gifts off to you. So don't forget, lampshade class is coming tomorrow. There will be an email to let you know. Okay, so if it doesn't come, check your spam folder to make it sure it hasn't gone there. I'm sure David will also post within the Facebook groups as well, David, so that everybody is well reminded. We will be back again on Thursday for our Garment Makers Christmas live question and answer sessions. I will bring in the ballerina and maybe 1 or 2 other things, so we have a different setting for Thursday. If we're not going to see you on Thursday, have the most wonderful time over the Christmas period and into New Year, and we very much look forward to seeing you all in January, ready for the start of another year of creativity with Quilters Question Time. So from David,
Bye-bye.
and from Peter,
Bye-bye.
and from me, thank you so much everybody, and a very Merry Christmas.